This is Jeannie Shear, UW-Madison Division of Extension Natural Resources Institute, and the Purple Loosestrife Biocontrol Coordinator for Wisconsin, and I'd like to welcome you to our first Purple Loosestrife Biocontrol program training video. In this video, I'll cover the basics of biocontrol and if it's an appropriate option for your sites, purple loosestrife identification, and the problems we have with the plant. Other videos will dig further into the nuts and bolts of the program. Biocontrol is managing one species with another based on predator-prey relationships. When a plant or animal is brought into an area where it didn't historically occur, it usually comes without its natural predators, and there may be nothing to keep it in check naturally, giving it the opportunity to spread unheeded. We can't count on new relationships like osprey and hare in eating these released koi. For many plants, nothing lives where it's put down their new roots to make a significant impact on the new populations. That was the case for purple loosestrife. Biocontrol for plants by beetles and other species that can easily move from patch to patch are very efficient options where access and the size of patches make physical removal difficult to impossible and the use of chemicals is undesirable. Is biocontrol safe? That's a fair question. Doing biocontrol means bringing in yet another non-native species to control the invasive species. Early in the history of biocontrol, there were major errors with long-lasting impacts, but international government and scientists have developed strict standards for research and law to control introductions of non-native species for biocontrol. Years of research took place before beetles and weevils that could be used to manage purple loosestrife were determined. Then both federal and state regulations controlled when and how they were allowed to be introduced to Wisconsin and other states. Next, research in each state further explored which species were most effective and how to rear and release them successfully. In our case, now retired biologist Brock Woods tested the species and methods in the mid-1990s, and his work resulted in the biocontrol program we have used successfully for over 25 years. The beetles used have naturalized and do not harm any of our native species. If you're considering biocontrol, keep these caveats in mind. We're dealing with living beings, so there can be ups and downs. Biocontrol is highly unlikely to kill all the plants, but it can get them to play nice or down to easy to remove levels. Yes, it can play nice. Bees as well as other pollinators can benefit, especially in areas where the native plant community has been reduced or lost. In the long run, we'd like to focus on restoration because when the purple loosestrife is the only flowering plant for the pollinators that use it, it's only available part of the season. That's like having a buffet with only one item on it, and it's only open from 4 to 5 on the third Tuesday of the month. Your site needs to be big enough to warrant the beetles and support them over time. Otherwise, they'll die off or fly off to other patches. You usually need at least 2 to 3 years to see really good results and to establish a self-sustaining beetle population. Why do we have natural ups and downs? You may have seen graphics similar to this in the past about the basic predator-prey relationship. Usually it's the poor rabbits getting picked on as the prey. A fox or bobcat is often used as the predator. If you have a large number of rabbits and a fox or two comes into their territory with no competition from other foxes or big predators, they will enjoy a bounty of rabbits for meals. They will be fit and healthy and ready to find a mate, and next thing you know, there'll be more foxes around. But as they gobble up the rabbits, it'll get harder and harder to find them for food, so they'll leave, or in an extreme case, start to die off. That gives the rabbits the chance to start multiplying until another fox or two comes by and reduces the numbers again. Obviously, it can be more complicated than this, but the relationship works in both natural systems and in biocontrol. The number of predators directly impacts the number of prey and vice versa. The beetles are the predator for purple loosestrife, more so than any native insects that feed on it. However, they have their own problems that can impact their population. Other insects, like dragonflies and their larvae, may eat the beetles' eggs or larvae. I once found a patch of purple loosestrife that was just full of bees and birds. The loosestrife was in bloom, so I wasn't surprised about the bees, but I wondered what was attracting the birds. Since the plants didn't appear to be going to seed yet, the birds may have been picking off larval Gallosella beetles to feed their chicks. Weather isn't a predator, but it can certainly have an impact on beetle populations. Extreme flooding when the beetles are about to emerge for spring or when the larvae move down into the soil for pupation might cause losses. If a polar vortex hits us just as the beetles emerge to start feeding, it may cause some die-off as well as stunting the growth of plants and reducing the food supply. If there's an insecticide spraying going on in the area where you are rearing beetles or near the patches you want to control, it's very possible to affect your beetle's survival too. If you really want to get as much purple loosestrife as possible out of the area you're trying to manage, biocontrol can best be used in conjunction with other methods, such as cutting back flowers, digging plants out, and chemical treatments. This is referred to as integrated pest management, and we'll look at that next. When people are interested in raising beetles, consider these two questions. Do they already know where the patches are, and are the known patches large enough to warrant biocontrol? The first step of any type of management, including biocontrol, is finding and reporting the patches to the DNR. Focusing on peak flowering time is the easiest way to find these patches. That can vary from late July in southern Wisconsin to as late as early September in the far north. Next, consider what management methods will work best. This table shows options that can be used together or alone. If the plants are few and far between, cutting them down and digging out the roots or dabbing chemical on this cut stump can be very effective. Some people who find plants late in the season with the intention of doing more management the following year will get out and cut the flowers off at least before they can go to seed and add to the bank of seeds already in the soil. Others may just do chemical treatments. Please remember that in Wisconsin you have to have a permit to apply chemicals where there is saturated soil or standing water. If you can walk in your socks and not get them wet and muddy, you can go ahead and spray. As shown on this table, the denser and more abundant the plants are over the acreage of concern, the more likely the chemical applications or beetles will be better. This can also depend on accessibility. In bogs, large mucky marshes, and wet areas, beetles might be the best option, even if the plants are not very dense and the acreage is small. Of course, there are other considerations. Many people will be absolutely against the use of chemicals. It can also depend on your management goals. In a moment, we'll talk about why you might not want to completely eradicate the purple loosestrife. If you want every purple loosestrife plant gone, though, you might use beetles until you're down to a manageable number of plants for digging or spot chemical treatments. Also, remember that once the purple loosestrife is gone, other invasive plants might come in if you don't intentionally introduce native seeds or starter plants. Here is an example of purple loosestrife acting like an acceptable partner with native plants. It was taken in 2021 at Dunlap Hollow in Dane County. The wetlands throughout this valley were once so dense with purple loosestrife that with a little digging you can find historic images on sites like Google Maps or Bing, which have aerial images that show just how purple Dunlap Hollow once was. There's still purple loosestrife and some heavier populations throughout the valley today, but in many areas you can also find it just mixed in with the natives where bees and birds are enjoying this plant along with others. Most sources say purple loosestrife arrived from Eurasia during the early to mid-1800s as part of ship's ballast and probably as seeds brought over for cultivation. Since then, it has spread throughout the U.S. and become so abundant in Wisconsin that it has been legally restricted for decades. It grows in every county, and its pervasiveness in wetlands led to the state's biocontrol program, which has now been in place since the mid-1990s. Before you try to control purple loosestrife, let's make sure you can identify it. There's no argument that the plant is beautiful, growing up to a stately 7 feet tall and loaded with spikes of magenta flowers. The seeds also may have been brought over because the beekeepers valued the quality of the honey produced by bees visiting the flowers. A healthy plant can have as many as 50 stems topped with these flowers thanks to all the energy stored in its woody roots. Notice that these photos show those happy bees, along with an example of the variation you might see in flower color. Some may appear a bit darker also. The stems are four-sided, although an older plant stem may start to feel rounded with additional sides. The leaves grow in pairs that are opposite each other on the stem. The leaf pairs alternate direction by 90 degrees. This purple loosestrife was so tall that to get the photo I wanted, I could only frame the top half of the plant. It was easily 6 to 7 feet tall. It had no signs of beetle damage. Most of the flower spikes were a foot long or longer. A robust plant like this can drop as many as 2 million seeds once the seed pods form and dry out. That's in a single year. The seeds are so tiny that once on the ground, they can easily be moved on the feet of animals and people or on tires. If they land in water, they are transported to any spot where a bit of open mud and light are available for sprouting. On the other hand, this purple loosestrife in a median in Madison is only about 3 feet tall, probably because mowing has kept it short. However, you can see here that the flowers are abundant, so there will still be many seeds. Having many seeds that are so simple to spread is definitely part of the problem with this plant, which is controlled by native predators in its home range. Unfortunately, like most plants and animals that act invasively, it had no predators when it appeared in North America, leaving the plants to grow and spread unheeded. This first photo is a patch of purple loosestrife in a ditch. Perhaps the seeds were washed into a welcoming spot by water, or they arrived from another patch on a mower's tires. This wetland has a stream running through it that probably floods, carrying the seeds throughout the surrounding wetland. This patch along a river is the largest and most dense that I've seen. The moist, low shoreline is a perfect place for the plants to put down roots and spread. Here, along a path through a beautiful wetland, purple loosestrife lines the boardwalk edges and has spread into the surroundings. Our friend the Gallercella beetle is a natural predator for purple loosestrife that leaves our native plants alone. It is key to our biocontrol program, helping us to reduce the growth and spread of purple loosestrife. Because it can fly, it's a great solution for areas like wetlands where we have a hard time doing any other types of plant management. To conduct biocontrol, we intentionally dig and pot some of the plants, catch the beetles during their mating season in spring, and then add around 10 beetles to each plant, which are netted so that the beetles stay put. Under the best conditions, we can rear about 1,000 beetles per plant to release back into areas which have purple loosestrife. Here, beetles are feasting on some purple loosestrife leaves. Purple loosestrife is their primary food source, and they eat as much of the plants as their tiny bodies can hold in both their adult and their larval forms. That reduces the vigor and strength of the plant, which can make them grow back smaller and with many fewer flowers. In spring, overwintered beetles emerge from the soil at the base of the plants to eat and mate and lay their eggs on the purple loosestrife before dying. They do all of this helpful work for us in just a year's time. When the eggs hatch, the larvae go through 5 stages referred to as instars, with each one being a little larger than the last. The larvae feed on the buds, leaves, and stems. They can devour the leaves to the point that they look like browning lace. To pupate, they move down into the soil where they'll stay until they emerge as adult beetles, which will continue feeding on the plants until they return to the soil to overwinter, which occurs about mid-August. Not everyone does every aspect of purple loosestrife biocontrol. For example, because digging and potting can be the most physically demanding part, some people will step aside and let others handle that part. We have partners who have found great spots where they can actually dig pretty easily, and they happen to know where to find their starter beetles, so they do the entire project on their own from start to finish. Others work as a team, and in each team there'll be different roles. Some may only take care of the plants and beetles at their home. We have others who might only sew nets. They might only help with the releases, or maybe they want nothing to do with rearing, but they really want to get out and dig those plants and maybe help pot them, but sometimes not both. Still others may only help finding the starter beetles in the spring. That happens to be one of my favorite parts. Thanks to our statewide partnership, we've had good luck finding roles for everyone and support for those who need it. Let's take a look at the basic timeline for Purple Loosestrife Biocontrol. First of all, realize you can look for the loosestrife at any time and go ahead and report it to the local DNR. You can do that through your AS coordinator, whether the local person or the DNR staff. They all know how to get it into the reporting system and mapped. Once you know where your loosestrife is, you're good to go to start planning for an actual project. So in winter, you're going to decide the roles that everybody's going to play. You want to send in your application, and at least at the time of this recording, a permit was needed. That may change in the future. The rest of this is going to really depend on where you are in this state and what your weather is, because extreme cold or early warm-ups can have a big effect. So by late winter, though, in general, everybody should be preparing for digging and potting. Have your tools ready. Let your volunteers know that you're out there seeing if the ground is thawed enough to start digging, if you're the coordinator. Just get everything in place. Then March to April generally, sometimes early May in the north, depending on the cold, you're going to be doing your digging and potting. Don't wait too long, because remember, you want the plants to grow as much as they can before the beetles come out and are ready to mate and be put onto your plants. So finding those starter beetles usually takes place sometime in May to early June, again, depending on where you are in the state. In the Madison area, I start looking at least by the second week of May, but I may not find really good populations until much later in the month. Growing time. You got the beetles in there. They're chowing away on the plants. They've mated. They're laying eggs. The larvae are hatching. You've got at least 4 to 6 weeks. So you're going to just make sure your plants stay watered. There's water in the kiddie pools, and you're going to watch. Once you start seeing those plants broken down so that you know those beetles or their larvae are running out of food quick, you're going to need to get those plants out onto the landscape and release the beetles. We'll talk about that further in another video. And those releases are going to happen in very late June, probably in the southern part of the state, to mid-July or slightly later in the north. Since we're dealing with living things that could really care less if we have plans, flexibility from everyone involved in a biocontrol project is important. Local coordinators and volunteers that are working together need to make sure everyone knows who will be responsible for what. It's very common for beetles to show up for collecting or to emerge on the plants for releasing right as you might have a vacation planned. I've actually collected and distributed beetles on Memorial weekends and done releases on the 4th of July, and it was okay. I had planned for it. If a coordinator or a volunteer have vacation time planned, though, during the biocontrol season, let each other know so you can plan accordingly. Maybe the coordinator will have no problem collecting your beetles and going to your house to put them on your plants. But just in case they're also off at the same time or busy with another aspect of their job, it'll be better if everyone comes up with some workable dates, understanding that they may need to be modified. Weather and the beetles themselves may mess up the best laid plans, so we adapt as we go. When we're getting close to release time, there's even more urgency possible. If no one is watching the plants who can also get them out to the release sites or notify those who will, all of the hard work can be wasted. It's amazing how plants that look pretty good one day can be absolutely devastated the next because larvae have been feeding or because new beetles have emerged to feed. So if you're the rearing person, make sure you have a game plan with your coordinator. Maybe the helpful neighbor will watch your plants. Coordinators, if you're going to be unavailable, make sure you let your partners know and have a plan. Everyone will be happier, including your beetles. Since one video isn't likely to answer all of your questions, you can send questions to dnraisinfo@wisconsin.gov or call 608-266-0061. If you're in a county with an AIS coordinator, they are very likely to be able to answer your questions and even help you get started. Visit the DNR website and search for AIS contacts to find the page that will give you all of their contact information. The program also has its own webpage on the DNR site, Purple Loosestrife Biocontrol and You. There you can find a full guide to the program as well as a mini guide, along with the Purple Loosestrife fact sheet for ID and the application and reporting data sheets that you will need to participate. This and additional videos will be posted on the UW-Madison Division of Extension YouTube page. Last, I'd like to thank everyone who contributed to this video. Photos, videos, and graphics were provided by all of these folks over several years, and their help, not just with this production, but with their efforts to manage purple loosestrife in Wisconsin, are appreciated more than you can know. Thank you.